Pod, the official podcast of Temple Athletics. I'm your host, Kevin Copp. And our guest today is Temple track and field cross-country head coach Elvis Forde. Coach Forde has been the head coach here at Temple for over a decade, since 2014, but has lived a wildly interesting life, which we recount today. He was born in rural Barbados, came to the United States to run track in college, where he was a four-time All-American competing at Murray State and at Southern Illinois. He represented his native Barbados in 2 Olympic Games as a sprinter in 1984 and 1988, and has also had coaching stops at Austin Peay and Illinois State. He has a wonderful story to share. I really hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. Here is Elvis Forde after this quick word from our Alpod sponsors.
From Westchester to Doylestown, from Drexel Hill to Lansdale to Philly, we all look out for each other, stepping up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years. And that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you. Learn more at IBX.com.
Not everyone we interview has an actual Wikipedia article, so I'm gonna assume that this is authentic. Is born in Barbados, 1959. Is that correct?
That is perfect.
They got that right. All right. So take me back to Barbados, 1959. What was life for you like as a child?
1959, man. If I could remember what I was like a child at my first birth, it'd be awesome. But I've passed that where I won't remember anything on my first year of birth there. But anything after that, I'd probably say I had a fantastic life on the island. We may not have had everything that we wanted because I'm from a family of 8 kids.
Now, where are you in the pecking order of 8?
I'm the 5th one.
Okay, so you're right in the middle.
Yeah, so there are 3 girls before me, and 2 of them are the older siblings. Then it was my brother, then my sister was right before me, and then there are 3 other siblings after me. And it was, we didn't have a very big house either, but one thing that would never change is the love and the friendships that we have. My mom, a lot of times we hear everybody talk about their moms. I get a little bit teary-eyed when I talk about that too, because my mom did like a little single brain of a family. I say that to say, but my neighborhood is who really raised me. So my neighborhood raised me, and my dad, he was AWOL. He was missing a lot in action, and I have no regrets of how my life has turned out, but at the same time, if I had to go back to my neighborhood, a lot of things that I have done them in remembrance of the people in my neighborhood. Every family probably that lives across the street, because, again, growing up on the island, you had the freedom to roam, you had the freedom to do all the things that you want to do, and I'm no different than any boy that adventured and got into trouble. Not the kind of trouble for anything that we regress the law, but, little neighborhood things that you do in regards to growing up on the island, where the freedom, going into ponds when you're not supposed to go in the pond, you're not supposed to go to the beach today because you got these chores to do, and at the same time, it was an exciting time. But my neighborhood of Haggett's Hill, St. Simon, St. Andrew, I lived on the eastern part of the country, which is the most rugged.
Okay.
And very picturesque, and but at the same time, peaceful. The chickens cross the street. The dogs live on the side of the road. People put their cattle out in the fields. And as a boy, you grew up saying all that. Chickens may lay eggs somewhere. You come across them, you take them home. Those are the kind of fun things that I did growing up. But my neighborhood is really my family. My neighborhood is who actually raised me.
I'm going to guess that, obviously, when you talk about being in a family of 8 and resources are going to be thin, it's got to be part of the reason that you find yourself drawn to running is the one thing that anyone can do, right? Is that it's this somewhat egalitarian sport in that you don't need money to be able to, you don't need training, right? At what age were you drawn to that as, beyond just being out in the town or in the streets and you're playing around with your friends? At what point does that become, something that you were drawn to as a pursuit?
Kevin, if I be honest with you, my first love was a sport called cricket. And I was pretty good at it too, but it ran in my family because a number of my My brother, he played for the national junior team. My brother, who was like my father figure to me, he played cricket for the national team. Was very good in his high school. It was very known around the island as we call it a spin bowler and a medium pace bowler. He was that. And then my cousin, who was my dad's nephew, he was on the national team for Barbados. So cricket was my first love, and I enjoyed it with one of my sister's son. We were pretty good, and the fondest memory I had, was playing for the school in my high school called the Federal High School back then. He and I were the opening bowlers. If you understand cricket, he coming from one end, I coming from the next, and here are two local boys that representing their high school, which is in the city. And he bowled from one end, and I bowled from the other, and that's a memory that I'll never forget because he and I grew up together. And running only, the funny thing about running is on the island is that we do something called sports day, and sports day is all about track and field most of the time. And as you go into high schools or middle schools on the island, they put you into what we call a set, which means that as you come to school, they say it's random in terms of how you get selected from house green, house red, house yellow, house blue. So you get placed in one of them so that on sports day, you would represent that school, that house, whether your school color was yellow, whether your house color was green or white, you wear those colors and show that you're representing. And then you got selected from that inter-school sports session to then represent the high school nationally. So that's how I really started my running career. I dominated the school sports. I won like the 100, the 200, the 400. I even throw the shot, put the javelin. I pretty much do everything because I wanted to win, and that's something that I was very competitive at in regards to being good. So. And the crazy thing about all this, how I really got attached to running, in the summertime, my next door neighbor, he worked in landscaping. So I get to, do some little odd jobs with him on the beach and stuff like that, taking flowers and plants to hotels and like being exposed to everything at a age of 14 or 15 across the island and going with him. And I run into this guy called Victor Eiffel. Never forget him. And he said, do you do any running? I said, not really. In my neighborhood, I run. And he says, well, I'm a member of a club, and would you want to join? This is when I was like 15. And I said, man, I don't know. I live in the country. I live far. 40 miles from where I live to the city was long. And I took him on it anyway because he had seen me run at the sports for the school, which is a national event. And he said, man, you should come and run. And the rest is history. So I owed a lot to him from just asking me. I said I don't have any spikes, and he said, but don't come, we'll make it work. And today I owe a lot to him for just kind of challenging me to come and alleviate my fears that it's going to be all right, and then the rest, everything else fall into place after that.
What was that 14-mile journey like to have to, I imagine you're doing that several times a week probably. What was the conveyance by which you're getting there? Well,
part of it was like in the summertime especially, if I was working with my neighbor going, I would say, well, I'm not going to go back home with you in the van this evening, so I would just catch a bus, which maybe I may be working on the West Coast, which is maybe a 5 mile ride into the city, and I would do that and go into practice and stuff then, and then I guess sometimes people trust you. I was learning to drive at that time, and Mr. Graves, God bless his heart, he would say, well, some even would say, well, you got your learner's permit, I'm going to let you drive. and I would drive even before I had my license, and he would allow me to do that. And then I got well enough at it. He let me, make those choices and would trust me with the van to drive 40 miles in the city. So again, so when I talk about the people that came into my life, this was my next door neighbor trusting me to drive when I probably didn't have my driver's license yet.
So was it clear early? I mean, obviously you demonstrated this aptitude in the track events and some field events, it sounds like, but you get into this running club, which is going to be a more serious form of competition. At what point, I mean, were you still just light years ahead of, I mean, to fast forward, you end up in the Olympics. So this is going to be the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. How clear was it early on that you had, beyond just being an athlete and having an aptitude there, I mean, you had a really serious gift and a real talent?
Well, I I'll go back to my high school first though, because even when I was there, I remember all the people that impacted me. Um, Coach, I can't, it's kind of dodging my name, but Coach Green, he was a very influential part of me. Mrs. Davis was and Arnold Briggs. Those were the three people that really impacted my running career, because I remember when Coach Davis one day says, "I'm going to put you on this 4x4." And he did. And I know I sometimes I ask myself why people, always kind of trust in me in regards of wanting to put myself out there. But there was always a quality about me that I approached things, and I did it as best as I can. I was probably the first in and the last out. I was probably, if I'm doing push-ups, I want to beat you. I just push whatever it is. I remember that some of our training used to be that there was this loop that you had to run. It was like a 4 mile loop, and I wasn't a distance runner, but even then I realized that you're competing, even although you're going for a run to get warmed up or whatever. And then I said, yeah, because if you are you have to have a belief that nobody can touch you if you want to go any place. And Barbados didn't have any standouts athletes at anything. We had kids over here going to college like I did, but nobody that had ever gone on and do anything. The only person that there had some females that were doing quite well. In fact, a young lady named Lorna Forde, everybody thought she was my cousin and everything. Even Sports Illustrated did an article when I got pretty good and said, "Hey, I'm family to Lorna Forde," which was far from the truth. But anyway, the other guy, Green, Orlando Green, that went to Seton Hall University, he was my inspiration. I remember when I saw him going to the Olympics in 1976 to Montreal, and find out the story about how he got there is really great to me. But going back to the high school part, when they saw me and I start feeling like, some things are happening. But as soon as I got to the club, I think the coach, Tony Lovell, recognized some things about me that he just started challenging me and pushing me. And then, I was like a little Energizer bunny when I went to practice and stuff like that as well. And people started gravitating towards me because I was starting to have some productivity. And then my next challenge was I want to make my first national junior team. And that was something called the Carifta Games team. And then the rest is after that. However, though, on a caveat to that, I beat everybody. And even the seniors I run fast on, I beat everybody. And I felt like, well, you're on the team. I could run the 200, I could run the 400. And then I'll never forget this day when they called me and said, we're not going to take you to the Carifta Games. In regards to, we're cutting back people and we can find somebody else to slot into your spot. Well, unbeknownst to me, I realized that they took people that I had smashed really in terms of running against them, and they took them to the games and put them in these events. I felt like I could have won a medal that year, and to win medals in the Caribbean Junior Games, which should be it's a big step up, and I didn't get that opportunity. And even today, I got a sister that she's just mad. She's stayed mad for 40 plus years because she realized that it was like an injustice done to me when I had performed at a higher level than anybody else. I beat all the athletes that had come home from overseas, because it was a big thing when the overseas athletes come home to compete at the national championship. I crushed them, and then all of a sudden, you still didn't get the goal.
It's not as simple as like the U.S. Olympic trials where it's like top three, that race is just top three are going to go or something like that. There's a human element to the selection process.
And that's what happened. So I just, I became very liberated to see what I feel. I said, you know what, I think that they didn't take me because I'm a country boy, but this country boy is pretty good. I actually said that to them, and I said I was angry. I can't tell anybody that because I had put in so much time. I had worked so hard. If you see where I live growing up, from the bottom of the hill to the top, I would say it's close to a mile of gradual, steady little levels off and up to the top. And one of my goals always was the day that I know I can get from the bottom of that hill to the top without stopping, I know that I'm going to be pretty good. And I tried it many times. And there's one little boy that was my next door neighbor called Robert Graves. Robert, I don't know if he used to watch me and watch everything I do, but whenever I was running up that hill, Robert was standing in between our house and his house and cheering me. And and I got her nickname, but I want to tell everybody what her nickname was. So he just would be encouraging me, and Robert would be just there. Come on, Elvis! Come on, Elvis! And the day that I made it, though, it was like the weight had lifted off my shoulders, and then it became so easy. But I can remember getting over the top of the hill. I can feel that my lungs was just my lung cavity was just going to burst. My legs were on fire. Everything that could hurt you. But I know that the drive and the determination I had is what get me over the hill, because in the last 200 meters, which was a little steep climb, I felt like I can just kind of give in. But sometimes I always tell even the kids on our team know that sometimes the pain is only temporarily, and it's true. Sometimes you feel like you're going to die, but reality, I think our bodies and mind is just more resilient than what we think it is sometimes. But that was the day that I knew that, I had made myself into a special runner based on the coaching that I was now receiving and the commitment I had made myself. Because my mom used to be always worried about me, and because I then became a student of my nutrition and what I eat. And going back to that, really, I don't know what artificial food was till I came over here to live. Because everything that I pretty much ate, except for rice and maybe flour and meal, it came from my neighborhood. Whether it was a butcher killing a cow up the road, a sheep, somebody rearing chickens in the yard, and like all those things are so unique. I didn't know what salad dressing was until I came over here to go to school in 1979. So everything I ate was just as in natural form. So I always kind of tell my kids now that I have 18 years of what I call truly organic in my body, so I got a good foundation.
That's right. Before it became trendy and you paid, through
yes,
the roof for it.
So that was always something that I shared with people, because I really never knew all the fruit that I ate was from my neighborhood. And if I go through what we call the gullies and the fields that are open, it just was as natural as it came to me. So I didn't understand when I first came over here to go to school. And the guys on the team introduced me to the cafeteria. I didn't know what Thousand Island was, French dressing. I was like, in fact, they make me feel nauseated. Sure. And that was because my body.
Well, there's probably these processed ingredients your body has never even had before. You probably don't have the enzymes to break it all down, or what.
It was a toll. It took me a good month before I can start keeping stuff down inside me. It was one of those challenges that I never forget, and even to this day, I still try to live a life of nutrition that try to bypass some of those things as much as I can.
All right, well, that's a perfect jumping off point. What got you to the United States? You came for school? So you deal with this setback of thinking you're going to get selected, on the Caribbean Junior Games. That doesn't happen. I know I want to get to the Olympics, but that's not until 1984. So you come over in 79, you said. Was it specifically to come to school? Was that the motivation?
I got I had run in a local meet in the Caribbean. I went to Grenada, and I had run a pretty good race there. I run like a 46.87 or something like that in the 400 meters there, and you never know who is watching. And I remember that I ran that, and felt good about it. I did well in the Caribbean, and I'll be honest with you, I never had the thoughts about ever getting a scholarship, because that wasn't on my mind. I had nobody that was talking to me about stuff like that. And then I went to practice one evening, and Tony Lovett said to me, he says, well, I had a former athlete from Murray State University in Kentucky reach out and ask me about you. And then Coach Lovett start having conversation with him. And again, he had most of the conversation with him because our phone didn't have a house. We didn't have a phone at our house for him to call me. And then through the next door neighbor, and communication started to progress, and I asked my next door neighbor, who is still always like a family member to me, and if we can use their number to have a call. And then they started calling me there, and then they will send somebody to grab me from my house, and I'll come over and have that conversation with the coaches to get to meet and talk and about it. And Tony Lovell arranged with Bill Cornell, who was the head track coach at Murray State University in Kentucky for us. And then after that, other people like Seton Hall started calling me because, again, the guy Orlando Green had went to school there with John Moon. And I said, I told Tony, whoever going to send the scholarship papers for me first, that's where I'm going to go. So it wasn't like I know about Murray State and Kentucky.
I was going to say, what could you possibly know about Kentucky at that point in time?
Because Seton Hall or Kentucky State, I didn't know anything about those schools.
There's no way, yeah.
It's just a matter of people talking about me because of somebody reached out and shared what they had seen me done back at the race in Grenada. So, and that was the start of it. And once the things kept rolling. The scholarship papers came, and my education was it was not I was not a 4.0 student, but I had good enough grades. The certificates I got back was enough to get me into school. And then I came over here. I'll never forget it, in August of 1979, and arrived in Nashville, Tennessee. And my coach picked me up. It was late at night, and he drove me to Murray, Kentucky from there, which is like a 2-hour drive. And I was pretty much asleep all the way from Nashville Airport to Murray, Kentucky. But never forget, I remember the night that he dropped me off at the dorms, Hart Hall in Murray State, Kentucky. He says, give me your passport and your ticket. And I was like, okay. He said, I'm going to keep it for safety. And it wasn't really he was keeping it for safety. He was keeping it in case that I wanted to leave. You know, here I might come from
you had to go through
him.
Yeah.
So that in case that here's a guy coming from the islands, the weather, obviously, even at that time of the year, the weather was like 60-something degrees at night. And that was cold for me, you know, and I was freezing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I go and I sleep in the night. I'll never forget what I got the first night. I got 2 sheets, a fitted sheet and a flat sheet, and 2 pillowcases. There was no time for me to shop because nobody came with me. I just came over, fit in the dorms at night, slept, you know, probably didn't sleep past the night. But I got up in the morning because he gave me like 2 pieces of paper and said, this is your breakfast at the cafeteria the next morning. So I wake up, look out the window, and the sun, it was beautiful. The sun was shining. It would look really nice. So I go to walk down the staircase to go, and as soon as I open the door, a cold breeze hit me. And I was like, is this what I come to? And I'm in flip-flops and a pair of shorts and a T-shirt thinking that because the sun is shining, that it's going to be nice and warm.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the rude awakening for me as well. But I went back inside and put on some jeans, and I complained about the cold for a long time. But then I realized, you know, I was there by myself at that time when I arrived. But as soon as the athletes, other team members started coming in, they started to make me feel more at home. But I couldn't get past the cold. It took me a long time to get past the cold weather. But once I started to get engrossed with the other team members and get to know where I was, it took me quite a while to get used to it. But once we start practicing, I think that's when all my lights came on.
You're speaking the common language of sport at that point. Now, were there any other internationals?
Yes, there were a number of guys from Antigua that were there. And again, who helped made it so much more easier.
Yeah.
But anybody else I was like a pioneer.
I was going to say,
Kentucky.
I don't want to cast aspersions on Murray, Kentucky, but Murray, Kentucky in 1979 does not strike me as the most cosmopolitan place that you could have landed. It's got to be a little tough there.
I'll tell you what, cultural shock wasn't the word. It's kind of like a time of learning because I think people think of this, but you know, here's a African guy going into Murray, Kentucky, which wasn't the most pleasant of places. Mm-hmm. But you know, and they start telling me all these things. But one thing that I learned is that you got to carve a path for yourself sometimes. And my mom always told me, you know, to respect people and to be kind and have empathy. And if you got a chance of telling a person about something, she says, do it. And there's one piece of thing one little proverb, whatever you want to call it, my mom always said to me is that she always said this to me, and God bless her soul. People can throw shit on you, but don't ever let them rub it in.
That's good.
And you know what, I remember that this day. And you know, as I, you know, came over and I went back home one year, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what do you mean by that? She said, well, simply put, you know, if any people can throw things at you, that's all right. But the moment they start to rub it in, you got to fight back.
Yeah.
And she said, you got to fight back and fight back with everything you've got. And but you know what, that's something I learned from her. But my mom was the mom of the neighborhood. She took care of all the kids in the neighborhood. I remember there were times that because we live in the hill and you ride a scooter or a bicycle, a lot of kids would fall off their bicycle and have teeth knocked out their head, strawberry rashes all over, or maybe a broken collarbone or something like that. My mom would, the next car that passed, my mom would flag them down and ask them to take that person to the hospital. And it was a number of evenings that we would get home from school and there'd be no dinner, not because that she didn't prepare it, but because she took somebody else's son or daughter, mostly sons, mostly sons to the hospital because they fell off their bicycle or scooters or the little contractions that we make to do downhill riding and stuff like that as well. So that was who she was. And And you might say I talk a lot about my mom, but I remember my mom's funeral was like a statesman funeral. Every person from every walk of life knew my mom, and because she had that kind of compassion, and when it came to politics, she was just honest with the politicians. I know who I'm voting for already, but we can still have a conversation. That's
Yeah.
who she was, and she made a lot of friends because of that. And if my mom knew you and you had someone that passed away, my mom would accompany you to kind of give you some person to have solace with you and comfort you. That's who my mom was.
That's really, really special, and you can tell how much it means to you even now. Was it hard being away, especially because, as you've described, I mean, communication, it's not like we have now. You just pull out your phone and text and call. Was that aspect of it challenging for you?
Challenging wasn't the word because it was letters then. There was no
Yeah.
phone call because I didn't have nowhere to call.
Right.
My next door neighbor.
Right.
And even if you call, you would get by a number of quarters.
Yeah.
And then you go and you have to dump them in the
Sure,
coins,
and
and then you
long
hear
distance, and
then you say the
yeah.
operator when you get close to the end. If you add more money, you'll have a next minute or something like that.
Yep.
And that's the kind of communication. And the fun part is that you write a letter, and the letter would take, by the time it gets there, that's 3 weeks at least. By the time if they respond upon it right away, that's another 3 weeks. So it's like almost a 2 month exchange of words, and every once in a while, and I don't know if I said this or not, but I'm going to be honest with you and everything I say. My coach would allow us to, or sometimes he would just sneak in his office and get a Watts call. 800 watts call. We know the numbers fast and dial it. Try to get in and say, "Hi, mom, hi, sister," whoever before the coach get back
Yeah.
there. So just try to get it. And he probably realized that. I remember the time that he caught when he looked at all the numbers that came on the WhatsApp. He knew it was us, and we had to pay them back. So,
Yeah.
but it was those precious moments to just get to say hi to your family. Then was like anything else. But letters last a long time. You read them, you overread them, you read them, you didn't throw away a letter when you get a letter from your family. You
Yeah.
kept it because that was like a remembrance, and for me it was. So it was a fun time.
All right, so how do we get then from Murray State? You come there in '79. The first Olympics you compete at is '84 in Los Angeles. Is that
Yeah,
right?
But I was chosen for 80 with a boycott as well.
Okay.
So I would have had 3 stints if that happened.
So you and Diane Richardson share that. That was interesting. We just
Yeah.
had Diane Richardson on, and she
'Cause
was selected for 1980 as well and couldn't go because of the boycott.
Get boycott and stuff like that. But yeah, I got into Murray State, and then I started running really well. And like I said again, it's cold as it may be, maybe the weather I didn't like. They had a lot of amenities that I didn't have. The track was right outside the stadium because at that time back in the 70s, Murray State had some of the best facilities in the country. Nice track. It was built in the football stadium, and all you had to do is walk off the track, walk right into the locker room. And at that time, Murray State was probably ahead of everybody else. They had like a whirlpool. They had a sauna. And all that was right there next to the men's track and field locker room, along with the football and all the other sports that were in there. So they were way ahead. So I was like, that was like luxury to me. Here I'm at Murray, don't matter where it is, in the boonies or whatever. I was having a swell time because I was now being trained. I was being able to. The problem I still had though was with the nutrition part, but the other aspects of it, the weight room, going into the sauna, and it was like a fun thing to go in the sauna and things I've never done. So I was wide open with my eyes to kind of take in all of this, and then I started running really well, and again would have been selected for the 80 games, and then all that happens and things went downhill. But nevertheless, then you get motivated. I said, well, I want to make it for 4 more years, and I kept training. I went on to be runner-up in the NCAA in the 600 yards then indoors, and 1 year I qualified for the NCAAs in the 400 meters, the 600 yards, the 800 meters, and the 1,000. I chose to run the 600 yards and was runner-up back in 1982. Sorry. After 82, though, I got an opportunity to leave Murray State. And I left because my coach was leaving and going up to Southern Illinois and Carbondale, which back at that time was one of the best programs in the country. And in my time at Murray State, though, we got to win a championship that they haven't won in a long time. And we should have won 2. And the 4x4 in 1982, we lost it because one of our guys got in some trouble. We weren't able to run the 4x4, so we lost by a couple of points. And I didn't talk to anybody on a 5-hour ride back from from Eastern Kentucky back to, because we should have won. And I kind of never forget that. But I had won. I had become an All-American, and now was the talk of the school in terms of making a mark for myself in the school. And then the opportunity came. My coach was going back to his alma mater, Southern Illinois, and he said, I want to take a couple of you guys, and I was one of those. And it was probably the best thing that happened to me besides coming over here on scholarship, because I went into a program where there was very competitive guys. Guys like Michael Franks, who went on to be runner-up in the World Championships in 1985, and we pushed each other, we challenged each other, and the team got so well, and it started flourishing. I can remember, and in '84 when we started the track season, we said we had a couple goals. We want to set the collegiate record indoors. We set the collegiate record indoors at University of Indiana. We were on like 3:07 or something like that, which was pretty fast back then.
Yeah.
And then we kept that going. Unfortunately, though, we went to the championships in Syracuse that year, and we beat everybody else, and then we got disqualified. So here's another painful moment. You just walk the field, and then they say you're going to be disqualified. And disqualified we were because we know it was going to happen, because our second leg was blatantly actually pushed the guy, and that's and you think you extend your, just like football, you extend the arm out.
Yeah.
It was done, and those are still painful moments. I can remember the commentators on ESPN and our teammates give us hell when we got back to school, saying you guys, it wasn't even worth the Heineken that they bet on you guys when y'all were running. So, because we're just some cruel kids, but then those things were acceptable because we fought on what our goals were. And then outdoors, again, the same thing. We went back. We set the collegiate record at the Drake Relays, which is one of the prestigious relays around the country. We ran 3 flat. Should have been the first collegiate team to have gone under 3 minutes for the 1600-meter relay. And again, we'll never forget that. We were that good that we set two records that stood for a long time. And even at some of the facilities, we still hold that mark at the Drake Relays, which is such a good feel every year, and to know that that's still there after some.
So there's very few running records that hold up as
40,
long as that.
Especially for 40 years, it's still there. The guy that is the director of Drake, he always called me and kid with me because I sat on a track and field committee with him at the NCAA. So it's been a special time in that regard. And then misfortune hit us again. We were beating everybody at the national meet out in Eugene. And I stepped on my teammate's Achilles, and he fell down, and we ended up finishing 4th. And I think it hurt him that year, and that took him out of the track and field for the rest of the spring and early summer, and he was unable to try to go and qualify for the U.S. team. But I feel like he would have qualified based on how well he was running, and then I got chosen then to represent Barbados at the games in Los Angeles.
To go back in '88, then as the flag bearer for for Barbados had to be a special. I mean, I think to you do all that build up to get there, and then to have to. I mean, a 4-year cycle is an eternity in a lot of sports, but in track and field in particular, that's a long time to be able to be back to that level and to be honored by your country the way you were. And that's Seoul, right, in '88.
Yeah.
Does that stand out?
But it was such a painful time, though. You had all those goals and expectations. But the good thing that drove me after that was that our team in '84, the Barbados team that went to the games, we were the first team to make a final. So the 4 of us that were on that team, the first time Barbados had everybody in any finals at the Olympics. So we were celebrated,
right?
Because everybody was in front of the TV that finals there.
You were a national hero.
National heroes,
and
people are talking about us and all that kind of stuff. And we ended up finishing 6th, and that was like. There's this little time. I mean, Jamaica dominated and Trinidad always dominated and had people. That's the closest that Barbados on its own had ever come to, doing something special in the Olympics. So we received some great treatment. People knew who the 4 of us were, and we go back and reminisce about it. And then my goal was like, you know what, I want to come back in '88, better. And boy, things were going really good because I was preparing myself and like you said, for 4 years though, it's the drive, the commitment to wake up every morning and know that you want to get back to the games and the sacrifice that you have to make. It's tremendous, and I always some of I share with our team. I said, it's hard to want to be somewhere, but if you all know the commitment and the dedication and the things that you have to do, sacrifices. You only get there if you're willing to do that, and but I wouldn't go back and change anything in regards to getting ready for that next 4 year cycle because now I'm out of college. So it's now, you're on your own pretty much, and the government then help support me in some small way to do that. But I sometimes fortune happened in your life. I met a guy he had this club called the Atlantic Coast Club in Norfolk, Virginia, and he took me under his wing and get me into the club, and that saved me a lot of expense. All the traveling I did and things that I had done then, the club covered the expenses. So I got fortunate as compared to some of my counterparts on that team. They didn't get that lucky to kind of have somebody to kind of, offset the cost of trying to train for 4 years, and that became very, very helpful. However, though, I can't not say that I hit misfortune again. And in 1988, Kevin, I can talk to you like it was yesterday, and you guys have seen me had misfortune here at Temple already with an accident in the back here. But in '88, I went to the consulate office in Manhattan, Barbados Consulate, just to check in. And I got there, and I used to go in regularly because it was like, a little haven for me to kind of pay a check and kind of support. That time I only had my daughter. But I walked into the office, and, it was about 10:30 in the morning. The chauffeur for the consul general, he said, hey, call me Forde. Hey, Forde, you want to go and have a bite? And my response to him, I feel like I'm going to eat a cow.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin, those are the last words I mutter. I passed out. Passed out. And I'm thankful for a lot of things, Kevin. And when I share my stories with others, I feel like I'm here for a reason in life sometimes, because what I went through, and I'm still alive and have all my faculties and everything working for me, all the people that assisted me that day thought I was a dead man. No heartbeat, no pulse, nothing. I don't remember anything. This is March, and got ferried off to some of the finest hospitals in New York to take care of me. When I woke up and I saw people standing over me, it was my wife and my daughter. And I asked her, what am I doing here? This was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon now. And I learned a couple of things along the way. My mom always said to me, two things happen to people when they're dying. They either poop themselves or they pee themselves. I had peed myself, Kevin. I look at my pants. I have on a brown pair of slacks, and I can see all the urine stains on my leg. And I'm like, I said to my wife, where's my mom? And then I look at my daughter. She's got on the wrong socks. And I know that my wife used to be so particular when the kids dress, and she is in the wrong socks. She says, well, they had to come and get me to bring me in. But, at least I was up then, because a lady that was in the consulate then, she who was a certified nurse, she thought I would have a loss of some movements in my arm and faculty of my brain and stuff like that, because she said they perform mouth resuscitation and chest pumps for me for about 20 minutes. And when the ambulance come, they were still working on me, and fortunately they got a pulse, and they ferried me off from there to the hospital, New York Medical Hospital. And and when she saw me weeks later, I was still walking, I could hear and I could see and I can do all that, she was like, you are a living miracle. So I don't take anything for granted, Kevin. I don't take the slightest thing for granted. My attitude towards life is like, you know what, you've been given a chance, and all I want to do every day, Kevin, is do good and give off myself as much as I can, because for whatever reason that I'm still here, I am always thankful, and nobody can never see in my heart or see in my soul to know how I feel. But I'm blessed in ways that I can't even, comment or talk about sometimes because of that. And that ended pretty much my second shot for the Olympics. That took me out for about 2 months, and this was March, so that means March, April, May, Olympics in August. I know how to come back and reprogram myself to find myself again, and it just didn't come back. The fastest I got after that, I ran like a 46.4. But the country said, hey, we're still going to take you to the games. And I went to the games, and I was exited in the first round, which was, here again, you put in 4 years, and all of a sudden it comes crashing down. But I look at things in light of, the attitude that you bring to it then. is an attitude. You got everything we do has a choice. So I can choose to be miserable about it, or I can choose to realize that for whatever reason it's happened, I can't change it. All I can do is live in with as optimistic as I can and go on from there. So it just doesn't. It hurts sometimes when you go back to talk about that. It hurts when you get disqualified at the NCAA's in '84. It hurts when you fall down at the NCAA's in '84. But for all those moments of challenges that you see, it hasn't changed my mind of how I feel about anything that I've done. Because for me, life is a choice, and your attitude, you get to choose that attitude every morning you get up. I choose to revel in life and enjoy the things that I do, and every opportunity that I get that I can share something with a person or help someone, and I can do that, I'm the happiest person in the world.
Well, I've always seen you bring that exact attitude. Exactly what you're describing is, I feel like, every interaction that I've had with you in the last decade. And I do want to be sensitive to our time. I don't want to keep you longer than we said, but I do think that I think what you've given us today is a perfect illustration that you can look at someone's biography and you see, okay, born in Barbados, gets himself to the Olympics, long tenured coach in the NCAA, all these great things, and you say, oh, this is just a straight linear path. It goes up, 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 up. What a beautiful, all-American story, and you have been able to achieve some incredible things, and yet along every one of those steps, there was this setback, there was this unexpected, there was this injustice, all of these things. And I'm just wondering, and I don't mean to breeze through your entire second act of your life, but I can tell that this has informed the way that you coach. And obviously this has been the thing now that you've done longer than anything else in your life, is to be a coach. And, so much of that is being a mentor and a role model and psychotherapist and all of these different hats that you wear as a coach, especially now into 2025. Just how has that life experience, this, what you described, this joy and this passion you have just to be here, how that has made you a better coach and a better person?